On the shore dimly seen through the mist of the deep, where the foes haughty host in dread sight.
It was election day evening, and I arrived at my local polling station just as the sun was setting. The air felt thick, almost heavy, like a storm was coming. People around me looked tense and quiet, each lost in their own thoughts as they waited to vote. I could feel that this wasn't just a normal day. Something felt different, almost unsettling. As I reached the front of the line, I got a text from my friend Alex. "Did you hear about the guy who disappeared after voting? They say he saw something he shouldn't have." I forced a smile, trying to shrug it off. Probably just another election day rumor, I thought. But a strange feeling crept into my chest, making me feel uneasy. Inside, the polling station was nearly empty. The volunteers looked tired, almost wary, as they handed me my ballot. I took a deep breath, cast my vote, and headed toward the exit, hoping the fresh air would clear my head. But as I stepped outside, I noticed someone standing alone by a nearby car, watching me. The shadows from the streetlights made it hard to see his face, but something about his stance felt wrong. My heart picked up as I walked to my car, keeping an eye on him. Just as I unlocked my door, I heard him yell, "Run! They're coming!" he shouted, stumbling toward me. Panic shot through me as I jumped into my car, locking the doors. I looked back, but he had vanished into the darkness, leaving only silence. As I drove away, I kept looking in the rearview mirror, expecting to see him, or maybe someone else, following me. But the streets were empty. My heart was still racing, and as I took a deep breath, I thought about his words. Who was they? Why was he so desperate? When I got home, I realized I had my ballot receipt still in my pocket. I took it out, staring at the small piece of paper that symbolized my vote, my choice. It should have made me feel like I did my duty, like I'd taken part in something important. But instead, I felt exposed, like someone knew everything about me from that one vote. That night I lay awake, wondering if Election Day was supposed to feel this way, filled with dread and questions I couldn't answer. I kept my phone by my side, half expecting another message, half hoping for a simple explanation, but none came. Election Day can feel like an act of power, but sometimes it reminds us of how small we are. And maybe, just maybe, it's better not to know everything about the forces at play behind that single vote. It was early on Election Day, and I arrived at the polling place before the crowds. The building was an old community center, creaky and dimly lit, giving it a strange, eerie vibe. But I brushed it off, eager to cast my vote and be part of the day's excitement. As I moved through the line, I overheard two volunteers speaking quietly. "We can't let him in again," one whispered, glancing around nervously. "Last time, he said things, strange things." I strained to hear more, but they quickly noticed me and fell silent. I shook it off, thinking maybe it was just a local troublemaker they didn't want around. I cast my vote and was about to leave when the doors swung open and a man stormed in. His face looked haunted, his eyes darting around the room as if he was searching for something or someone. "They're lying to you all," he shouted, his voice echoing through the hall. People froze, a mix of confusion and fear spreading across their faces. The volunteers rushed to him, trying to calm him down, but he pulled away, turning his wild gaze on the rest of us. "You think your vote means anything? You're just pawns in their game." His words felt chilling, not just because of what he said, but because of the conviction in his voice, as if he knew some dark truth none of us could see. People started murmuring, uncomfortable, inching toward the exits. I slipped out with a small group, but his words stuck with me. As I drove home, I couldn't shake this feeling that something wasn't right, that maybe he was warning us about something real. That night, as the results came in, I found myself staring blankly at the screen, wondering who was really pulling the strings. I knew I'd done my part, but for the first time, I felt like maybe that wasn't enough. Election day was winding down, and I was finally home after a long day of volunteering. I turned on the TV to catch the early results, feeling a mix of excitement and exhaustion. Just as I settled in, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but curiosity got the best of me. "Hello?" I answered, expecting a friend or maybe a campaign follow-up. Instead, a raspy voice spoke softly, almost a whisper. "You shouldn't be alone tonight," the voice said. My stomach dropped. Before I could ask who it was, the line went dead. I tried calling back, but the number was blocked. I laughed nervously, trying to shake off the feeling. Maybe it was just a prank. After all, strange things happen on election day. But something about the call unsettled me. I put my phone on the table and tried to focus on the TV, but my mind kept going back to those words. Minutes later, the phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time I hesitated before answering, but eventually picked up. "They know you voted," the voice whispered. "You should leave. Now." Then the line went dead again. I looked around my empty living room, feeling like I was being watched. I peeked through the window, but there was no one outside. I tried to laugh it off, but I couldn't ignore the feeling that something wasn't right. I packed a few things and left my apartment, driving aimlessly through the quiet streets. The night felt strange, tense, like the whole world was holding its breath. As I drove, I kept checking my rearview mirror, half expecting someone to follow. But the road stayed empty, silent. I eventually ended up at a friend's place and spent the night there. In the morning, I checked my phone. No new messages. I wondered if I'd imagined it all, but deep down, I knew it had been real. And for the first time, I felt like my vote, my small choice, had somehow made me part of something bigger and darker than I understood.